Sinclair Broadcasting stock is up more than 10% this week after the news that Amazon is making a minority investment in Sinclair's Bally Sports Networks as part of a bankruptcy settlement. Jamie Lumley, senior analyst, Third Bridge, joining us now to explain more. Your thoughts when you saw the news on this? Maybe you were surprised, maybe not. They had to move forward with this. Tell me more about this.
This is a really fascinating story, and there are a lot of moving parts. Just to go through some of the history here, Sinclair bought Diamond Sports Group back in 2019. Then it was immediately hit by the pandemic, having games not happen, on top of then seeing cord cutting accelerate over the last few years to make the regional sports network business all that much harder. Fast forward a couple of years, last year we saw Diamond Sports Group and the Bally Sports Networks file for bankruptcy. And over the last year or so, it has been a really tough road as they try to figure out how they can emerge from bankruptcy and if they can emerge from bankruptcy. Then this week, we have Amazon step in, put in this investment, and this could breathe life into a company that was at death's door. Now, it's important to remember that there are still a number of things to work out with this deal, what exactly the new company will look like. Everyone has to get on board. Do the sports teams want to stick around for this? But this could be a way that Amazon can bring a company back to life and then also expand the sports offerings that they have through the Amazon Prime Video platform.
Every Thursday night, we're watching football on Amazon Prime, right? And how's that been going for Amazon?
Yeah, so definitely looking at the other sports they have, Thursday Night Football being the big one there. Certainly an expensive property. If you look at the deal that they have with the NFL and the billions of dollars that this costs, it has been so far fairly successful. They saw double-digit increases in terms of audience for this football season versus last, and hopefully from Amazon's standpoint, this will continue going forward. And they're now looking at introducing ads, really expanding that into the platform to focus on monetization. So if we think about what Prime Video has today, they have Thursday Night Football. They have a number of different channels that you can subscribe to through their platform. Bringing in the RSNs rounds out the sort of offering they can have to really bring more of that local sports programming. Now, again, it is important to remember that this agreement does not yet have the okay from the various sports teams. Bally Sports works with the NHL, NBA, and MLB, and the relationship with the various sports franchises in here is not necessarily that strong after this last year. It has been a very turbulent process working through this bankruptcy proceeding. But if the teams do stick around, this could create a quick fix for what had been a pretty messy situation.
I think it's pretty fascinating, too, because, first of all, I don't really have clarity on how much this might cost Amazon. And you see all the different local newspapers in Minnesota, the Cavaliers, when I was going through the Cavs, the Guardians, what does this mean for the Rays and the Lightning? And people are so excited about how they may be able to move forward and watch some of these games. So I guess we have to wait and see on this landscape and see how it goes. But as you said, the football has been successful. In the meantime, you want to give us your thoughts on Netflix? We've seen some price target raises. Obviously, they've had the password sharing. They've made it through that. Tell me about your thoughts on Netflix for 2024.
So if we think about where Netflix is at the start of this year, they're reporting earnings next week, and the last quarter of the year is usually one of the stronger ones for Netflix. We think about people being home for the holidays, perhaps catching up on their favorite shows. Usually it's very strong for subscriber growth, and if we look at Netflix's previous quarter, they were already dealing with 8 million plus new subscribers in Q3, and with the ongoing paid sharing initiative, the crackdown and password sharing around the world, and also the scaling of their ad tier, there could be some substantial growth in subscribers for this quarter. The other big things to keep an eye on, though, are also thinking about, are there aftershocks from the holiday last year? While it seems that Netflix, according to our experts, left that fairly unscathed after the conclusion of the strikes, there could still be some disruption to the content pipeline, which could impact some of the engagement with subscribers, some viewership behavior, and maybe lead to some churn. So that's one area to keep in mind. And then also, I think a lot of people want to see what are Netflix's ambitions when it comes to gaming. They saw remarkable growth in their downloads last year, but at the same time, it is not clear just how committed they are to this part of the business. Is an acquisition in their future? TBD. It'll be really interesting to see what Netflix's management says when they report earnings next week.
And let me pick your brain on this, because you had Nelson Peltz out talking about that Disney should be he wants to get better margins, Netflix-like margins for streaming when it comes to Disney. In the meantime, you had the NFL looking at an equity stake in ESPN. What do you think about all things going on with Disney? Do you think Nelson Peltz has some merit? Do you think Bob Iger's doing the right thing? Do you think the NFL stake in ESPN comes through? Any thoughts on any of that?
So with Disney, of course, there's a lot of moving parts. And if we think about last year, it was a year of transition, but it seems like that transition is ongoing. If we think about ESPN, there's the floating rumors of the NFL potentially taking a stake. And this is really one of the biggest stories in media, because ESPN was viewed as the crown jewel of cable. There was so much discussion around this and the Charter Disney dispute this past fall. And the future of that will definitely have a major impact on both cable packages and the streaming landscape once it's a fully fledged streaming offering. If we think about just circling back to Disney, where it is today as a whole, there's still the cost cutting initiatives, the focus on profitability within streaming. And there are big questions about whether or not the trajectory that Disney is on today will be able to get the company to profitability within the streaming section this year. The experts we've spoken with have expressed some skepticism. It might need to wait till 2025 till they can really get there. In the meantime, Disney is really focused on delivering on their cost-cutting ambitions around the company, while also focusing on growth as well, not just the cost front. It'll be really interesting to see how the parks fare this year, both domestic and internationally. 2023 was really strong for international parks, seeing a massive resurgence after the pandemic. So Disney is really thinking about how to continue along the direction of cutting costs, managing the balance sheet on the streaming side, while also seeing positive growth in other parts of the company.
Yeah. How about Meghan Markle being upset about getting an Emmy snub? Really, when you think about Suits, right? That didn't get nominations, and then her docuseries with Prince Harry. There was a juicy article in New York Post, that they're licking their wounds. I mean, it was interesting is how so many of these streaming companies then get nominated for these big time awards, right? For these Emmys, for example. I remember when the very first streaming show it was a big deal, right? And now it seems with all the cord cutting, you anticipate more cord cutting and more streaming, right, going forward?
So I'm not sure I want to weigh in on the royal side of Emmy stubs and et cetera. But if we think about the strategy from the streaming companies, it's really interesting to look at the balance of where do these award-winning shows come from, and then how does that necessarily affect the priorities of both the traditional TV landscape and the streaming companies. As you mentioned, it was a big deal when shows on Netflix started to be considered in awards. But then also we have this new framework today of this intense focus on profitability within the streaming landscape, and what that translates to for priorities for content. Because as we've seen with massive hit shows like Game of Thrones, for example, these new shows can have budgets the size of movies, and some swings are not always translating to home runs. If we think over to Citadel, for example, on Amazon, the amount of money which went into that show and getting not necessarily strong reviews, it's a tough balancing act to focus both on really high quality, successful programming, and also at the same time making sure the strategy is in place to have streaming continue to be profitable. So if we think about the landscape as a whole, it does seem that cord cutting is persisting. Streaming is still trying to figure out how it can be the future in this industry. And hopefully at the end of the day, we'll all end up with some good shows to watch in 2024.
Yeah, and Jamie, just to circle back on the Amazon Diamond Sports Bally deal, is that more likely than not to actually happen and go through, in your opinion?
So it certainly is early days, and a lot does depend upon how the sports teams respond to this. As earlier this month, it appeared by reports that the MLB was more open to negotiating directly with Amazon rather than seeing them make a deal with Bally Sports. So at this point, it is likely a toss-up. I mean, it depends on what the priorities are of the sports teams. They, of course, want to maximize the viewership of their games, get as many people engaged as possible, but also see what's in their best interest in terms of rights fees, as one of the major challenges with Bally Sports is those rights fees were not always coming in the door. That is a major source of revenue for them. So if this is a better way for them to distribute their programming, they might go for it, but there's still a lot to work out for this one.
All right, Jamie Lumley, love chatting with you. And we have some great conversations, and good job avoiding the Meghan Markle story. Jamie Lumley,
Thanks, Nicole.
Third Bridge, thank you.